What's going on, my people? Hello and welcome to another video. It's quite a late, and this is a Chelsea transfer news video for you guys, where I keep you guys up to date with all the latest Chelsea news in the past 24 hours, especially after yesterday's last game week of the Premier League season. The Premier League season has been concluded. Chelsea somehow managed to get fourth after yesterday's crazy day. What a crazy day we had. But in terms of Chelsea transfer news, it's hectic. It's very, very hectic. Eden Hazard. Could Eden Hazard be making a return back to Chelsea, back to the Bridge, where his home is, back to where he belongs, the Prince of Stamford Bridge? It's a real possibility. That's what the reports are suggesting in Spain. Spanish publications and outlets are reporting that that Hazard could be returning to Chelsea. It's a massive possibility. We'll be delving into all the news and reports. We'll also be giving some information in regards to Eduard Mendy's situation. Will he be available and raring to go this weekend in the Champions League final, the biggest game in the club's history for a decade? And of course, I'll be delving into some news in regards to the striker situation with Erling Haaland, Lukaku, and of course Olivier Giroud. But before I do get into all of it, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and comment down below your thoughts, opinions in the comment section below. But without further ado, let's get straight into this news video. And starting off with the first news story, and it is of course in regards to the Don Eden Hazard. Of course, now according to a Spanish journalist, they're claiming that Eden Hazard has officially confirmed that he wants to leave Real Madrid at the end of the season this summer and return to Chelsea. Major reason for this, according to this journalist and publication, is that he's fearful that if Mbappe comes to Madrid, he's going to be taking his place. And of course, with his injury issues, the age being the age of 30, of course, he could be on the decline. He would like to return to Chelsea, where of course we made him world class, where he still has a house in Cobham. He hasn't sold his house in Cobham. He knows the club inside and out. He's adored and loved by the fans. He's the Prince of Stamford Bridge. He was our best player for a decade. He was the best player in the Premier League in its prime just only 2 seasons ago. It just shows you the sharp decline of Eden Hazard, and I think that we can revive him if we did sign him. Now, before I give my further thoughts and opinions, let me suggest what I think it would cost to actually bring Eden Hazard back to Chelsea in terms of a financial package. Now, initially when Real Madrid signed Eden Hazard from Chelsea, they paid £88 million as an upfront fee, and of course that fee rose to about £140 million in terms of add-ons, bonuses, clauses, etc. if Real Madrid won La Liga, which they did last season, if Madrid essentially advanced to the semis of Champions League in the next 2 seasons, which Real Madrid of course done, and of course if he secured certain goals and assists, which unfortunately hasn't done, majorly due to the fact that he's been injured half the time. So he has activated most of the clauses and bonuses, meaning that fee from £88 million did actually rise to about £130 to £140 million. So technically, Chelsea received a total of £140 million for Eden Hazard, which if you think about it financially and logically, was absolutely a masterclass. It was a Marina masterclass. It was absolutely superb piece of business, because let's not forget, this is an Eden Hazard with 1 year left on his contract. If you cast your minds back to 2019, the guy had 1 year left in his contract, and when a player has 1 year left in a contract, the clubs don't really have much power. It's down to the player, because they know that in 6 months' time you can negotiate a pre-contract with them. So again, as I said, I know he was arguably the second best player in the world at the time, but he wasn't young anymore. He was in his prime. He was 28 years of age. He had 1 year left of his contract. To even get anywhere near £140 million, fair play to Mourinho. That was an absolute Mourinho masterclass. And now my thoughts, opinions. How much do I think it's going to cost Chelsea to sign Eden Hazard back from Real Madrid? Do I think Eden Hazard is even going to come back to Chelsea? That's a completely different story, and that's a completely different question. But in terms of the finances, I would say around £60 to £70 million a total financial package. Majority of that would have to be upfront, I would say. Again, but we need to understand that he has been injured massively over the past 2 years. He's 30 years old now, so there is that chance that he potentially we will never see him back to his best, because of course he's been injured heavily. But we also need to remember that Real Madrid's medical staff are absolutely atrocious. You've seen the injuries to Ronaldo, you've seen the injuries to Gareth Bale. I mean, Gareth Bale has been consistently injured at Real Madrid. Isco, Nacho, all these guys, they've been injured on a consistent basis because Real Madrid notoriously are known for having such a poor medical team and medical staff. So again, I'm not saying that Chelsea have a fantastic medical team. I'm not saying that, because we're a bit suspicious as well. But is significantly better to Real Madrid. And I think that if he did come back to Chelsea, he knows the doctors inside and out. He knows the physiotherapies. He's getting a bit of a run together now. I think that we could potentially revive him. Will we see the best of Eden Hazard that we did 2 years ago? That's a completely different question. And personally, I don't think we will. But we can get something close to that. And remember, he's experienced now. He can help out the younger players. I think that for a fee of £60 to £70 million, I think Real Madrid would accept You know, Real Madrid cannot expect to get anywhere near what they paid for him. They can't, because the guy's been injured consistently, week in, week out for the past 2 years. He hasn't hit the form that he was 2 years ago, and he's aged another 2 years. So they can't expect anything near £140 million. So I think that I would say half of that is probably realistic. Remember, don't forget, he's older now. I think that maximum £80 million would do the trick, and I think it'd be a lot less. We're looking at, you know, between 65 and £75 million would be a realistic sum. And if we could secure him for £70 million, I think Chelsea should be all in the deal. Again, he's a winger, he's a creator. We need that creativity in the front three. He also offers us goals as well. He knows the fans, he knows the Premier League. He was the best player in the Premier League. I think that this would be a very good, logical deal. But again, we have other areas that we need to strengthen, whether that's, you know, striker, centre back, defensive mid, full backs, etc., etc. But in terms of, do I see this happening? No. I'll be honest, I don't see it happening. I've given you guys the financial outlay, how much it would cost. I think that, you know, it would take between 65 to 75 million pounds, but I just don't think it'd come back. I think that, you know, his dream was always Real Madrid. I think that he still wants to fulfill his dream. I still believe that he thinks in his head that he can still turn it around with the fans and turn it around at Real Madrid with his injury problems. And let's hope he does. For the sake of Eden Hazard, I hope he does, because it was always his dream move. He gave everything for this club. So I think that hopefully he does. And of course, Eden Hazard is not going to be a priority signing this summer. We have other areas that we need to strengthen. So I think Hazard would be more of a icing on the cake luxury signing. Of course, in football, in life in general, nothing's impossible. You know, there's no certainty, there's nothing impossible. Of course, we could be seeing Eden Hazard in Chelsea shirt next season, but in terms of likelihoods and possibility, I would probably say about 20 to 25%. I think that's even a bit too high. I generally don't think that Eden Hazard will be in a Chelsea shirt next year. But again, if any news updates on this, anything that happens, you'll be hearing this on this channel. Now, moving on to some striker news, and it has been confirmed that Erling Haaland is not going to be likely at all. According to Simon Johnson, who writes for The Athletic, again, a very, very reliable source, Athletic, the most reliable English publication you can get your hands on. Simon Johnson, of course, has his own connection and sources within Chelsea Football Club, and he has confirmed that, of course, we all know this, that hopes of Chelsea to sign Erling Haaland this summer are now gone after Borussia Dortmund secured Champions League qualification. Dortmund, they came third in the Bundesliga, meaning they do in fact qualify for the Champions League next season. And the issue here is, I always said to you guys, is the Haaland deal rested heavily on the fact that Dortmund will not qualify for Champions League football, because Dortmund never intended to sell him anyway, because they know that his clause will come in next summer. They want to keep him for another year. He's their best player in terms of price asset, in terms of what he brings to the team, you know, goals, assists, his player value, etc. So they were going to do everything they could to hold on to him. They don't need extra finances because they qualify for the Champions League, so they're going to get that Champions League revenue into it. They don't need to sell him. And Haaland would be happy to stay at Dortmund for another year because they got Champions League football, and he's very happy and settled in Germany as it stands right now. And he's a young guy. He doesn't need to move right now. So again, it looks highly, highly unlikely that Haaland will be moving to Chelsea. So you can rule off Haaland. Don't even think about Haaland. As it stands, he's not coming to Chelsea. That leaves two possible targets: Romelu Lukaku and Harry Kane. Of course, Lukaku being a more likely player that we could potentially sign, but that also has its own implications, and I'll be making a separate video for that in another time, definitely in the near future. But in terms of strikers we have at the club, Olivier Giroud and Tammy Abraham, as you delve further into the Athletic article, they're stating that Olivier Giroud is expected to depart Chelsea this summer, and Tammy Abraham is keen to leave the club this summer. Of course, he hasn't got the sufficient game time. He's been surplus to requirements. Olivier Giroud, of course, he's 35 years of age. His contract does actually expire this summer, unless, of course, Thomas Tuchel wants to extend it. But he hasn't got the game time. Of course, Benzema being called up to the French squad for the Euros means that Giroud's squad is actually in jeopardy. So I don't know what his head's at, where his headspace is at. I don't think he can extend. So it's very possible. Tammy Abraham's definitely gone. You know, he's not getting the game time. He's not rated by Tuchel. Giroud's not getting the game time. He's aging as well. So that's two strikers out the door. So again, that frees up one space for a world-class, you know, top-class prolific goal scorer that we need. And of course, you can tick off Erling Haaland off the list. As I said, two possible solutions: Harry Kane or Romelu Lukaku. Lukaku being a more realistic one out of the two because of our relations with Tottenham. But watch the space, because it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen and develop over the next few days and weeks or so. Of course, we'll hear a lot more after the season concludes. We've still got one more game, which is, of course, the biggest game in our history in nearly 9 years. But let's wait and see what happens. Honestly, let's wait and see what happens. Any news updates, you'll be hearing it on this channel. If you did enjoy this news daily, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and comment down below your thoughts, opinions in the comment section below. And I'll see all of you guys for my next video. Peace.